In this video, I'm going to use the Mimic from Dragon Quest Monsters as a Pokémon in Fire Red. The Mimic has been a staple enemy in RPGs, usually disguised as a treasure chest, and it's no exception in the Dragon Quest games. Its stats are taken from the original DQM2 on the GBC, and they are pretty average, except for HP and defense. It uses table 25 for HP, which is rather deceptive because it's a late bloomer that only starts growing quickly from level 42, a level it can hardly reach without a lot of breeding. This is why I've nerfed its base HP by about 20 points. So, it will have 135 base HP, 75 in both attacks, 127 in defense, 85 in special defense, and 26 in speed, totaling 523, similar to most starters. However, its speed is abysmal compared to even the slowest starter. Since DQM uses lookup tables instead of a fixed formula to calculate stat growth, the rate of which can also vary greatly at different levels, the conversion won't be exactly faithful. Higher index numbers don't always mean higher stats either, and in this case, 10 and 12 are clearly better than 20. Its level-up moves are based on its Nightmare skill set in the 3DS remake, plus the skills it uses in the original, which are Frizzle, Cofrizz, Whack, and Thwack. Skills like Spooky Aura and Wave of Panic that lower resistances and all stats don't exist in Pokémon, so Haze will have to do as a stand-in. MP isn't a stat in Pokémon, so the best I could do for its Giga Magic Steel was to make the Giga Drain TM compatible. All basic solo run rules apply. Hidden Power is banned due to its luck-based nature in this generation. I will set up a Mimic with perfect IVs and pre-applied EVs. It will have a neutral nature, as I could edit the base stats directly to make necessary adjustments. I gave it the Ghost and Normal typing because the material family doesn't correspond to any single type, and Rock or Steel clearly doesn't make sense. Max Speed EVs are forced, just so it can run from wild Pokémon, and Max Attack is basically forced as well. The Disguise ability was only introduced in Gen 7, and there's no ability that increases the success rate of one-hit KO moves, so I just gave it Battle Armor to prevent critical hits. I put it in the same experience group as all of the starters, which level up quickly early on. Brock's gym was trivial, as he has nothing that can hit ghosts except Rock Tomb, which the AI treats as a speed debuff instead of a damaging attack. It would usually stop using Rock Tomb as soon as you become slower, so I'm not sure what it would do when it's the only move that can damage you. Well, I was trying to find out by wasting turns on Guillotine, which I expected to miss at least 3 times. But it somehow hit twice in a row, so I never got the chance to find out if the AI would use Rock Tomb to attack when I'm immune to everything else. I suppose the accuracy of one-hit KO moves does scale up with level difference. Rock Tomb is just terrible in this gen, and I can't learn it anyway. The second rival battle could go pear-shaped quickly if his lead Pidgeotto used Sand Attack, and I had no way to one-shot it since I replaced Guillotine. Luckily, having max speed EVs allowed me to go before it, and it chose not to use Sand Attack. The rest of his team wouldn't be a problem, since his Abra couldn't attack yet, and his Rattata had nothing that can hit me. Even if it had Bite, it would only do about 10 damage, as it's special in this gen for some stupid reason. I fought most trainers on the way to Bill's lab for the experience, and I picked up the Secret Power TM, which I get stab on for once. Misty's Starmie is incredibly overpowered for this early in the game, but so is Secret Power, especially when used by a normal type. The biggest threat in this fight is Confusion from Water Pulse, and it just happens to be the only move her Pokémon have that can hit ghosts. I had enough speed to go before her Staryu and one-shot it with Secret Power, but her Starmie was clearly faster. I didn't get confused by Water Pulse, but Bite couldn't one-shot it because, again, it's special for some stupid reason. I did manage to paralyze it with Secret Power, so it wasn't able to land a second hit on me. Water Pulse is a great move in the early game, but it makes no sense on a fake box. The rival on the ship is so underleveled that there's nothing to talk about in this fight. I'll just speed through it to save time. By the way, Meowth is the pickup Pokémon in these games, and pickup is the only way to farm berries before the post-game. It's also the only way to get the TM for Hidden Power, but that's not why I banned it for being luck-based. Rather, its type and power in this generation are randomly assigned based on your IVs, which you have almost no legitimate control over. This means you only have a 1 in 16 chance of getting the type you want, and its power could be anywhere between 30 and 70. Surge is the worst gym leader in the game. His first two Pokémon are severely underleveled, and his Raichu is only level 24 instead of 28 like in the yellow version. Also, how was I faster than his Raichu? It probably doesn't even have perfect IVs. Shockwave is another TM that I can't learn. Honestly, not many TMs in this gen make sense on a haunted treasure chest. Again, I'll just speed through the rival battle in the tower, since there's nothing worth talking about. You'd naturally be overleveled for this fight in a solo run, due to all the unskippable trainers along the way, especially in the rock tunnel. There's not much to talk about in the first Giovanni fight either. His Onix and Rhyhorn have almost no special defense, and while his Kangaskhan has the bulk to survive hits, it can't do much back due to its poor moves. I equipped a Cherry Berry for Erika's gym. As long as I can avoid paralysis, her gym shouldn't be any challenge due to the low levels of her Pokémon. Both her Victorybell and Tangela were easy one-shots with secret power. Her Vileplume survived a hit and used Stun Spore, but I had the Cherry Berry. I made the Giga Drain TM compatible because there's no MP stat in Pokémon and therefore no equivalent moves to Drain Magic. It's a bad move in this gen, with only 60 power and 5 PP instead of 75 and 10, but it will be my only means of recovery apart from rest. Koga's gym presents a huge level bump, but the bikers on the cycling road also give a lot of experience. They have many evolved Pokémon that give over 1000 EXP each. Toxic is the biggest threat in this fight, so I equipped a Pecha Berry for it. But it only works once, which means I will need to one-shot at least both of his Koffings. Crunch being special in this gen actually worked in my favor this time, because Koffing has terrible special defense compared to its physical. Even without stab or any special attack EVs, Crunch was able to one-shot his first one. It could have been a range, because it just missed a one-shot on his second one, or maybe they have slightly different stats. I got lucky on his Muck, which used Minimize instead of Toxic, and I didn't miss. His second Koffing didn't poison me either, despite it having survived a crunch. Weezing was the problem as I couldn't two-shot it with any of my moves, and it landed an annoying smokescreen. But I got lucky again and paralyzed it twice in a row with secret power, although I did get poisoned by sludge after spending my berry on a Toxic. It was only regular poison, and it came too late to make a difference to the outcome. Koga gives the Toxic TM, but I'm probably not going to use it, since I have no reliable recovery, and Toxic stalling just takes too long. The rival battle at Sylph Company already started to show the main problem I had, namely that I was slow and vulnerable to Intimidate due to my mediocre attack stat. Fortunately, none of his Pokémon had any EVs in this fight, so I was still able to go before his Pidgeot, and hence avoid Sand Attack or Feather Dance. His Charizard was faster than me, and it already knew Flamethrower in this fight. It did a lot of damage, considering my special defense was only average and I couldn't afford to spend any EVs on it. If he picked Blastoise, it would only have Water Gun at this point, not even Water Pulse. His Alakazam was also faster, and it could have easily taken me out with a Psychic or even Psybeam, so I have no idea why it chose Future Sight and Reflect instead of attacking directly. Well, I'm not going to complain about a win. The second Giovanni fight is just weird, as I don't think there's a single ground-type move on his entire team. His Nidorino and Nidoqueen still have Poison Sting. It was as if they purposefully gave each of his Pokémon literally the worst possible moveset they could come up with. So needless to say, this fight was a joke compared to the one against the rival. In fact, I don't even know what he has that can hit ghosts, besides Poison Sting and possibly Bite on the Kangaskhan, which has only 40 special attack. Psychic types from Gen 1 have low HP and no defense, so everything on Sabrina's team was a simple one-shot. I don't know why they gave her a Venomoth when it should clearly be on Koga's team, but defense is its worst stat as well. I was debating whether to make the Calm Mind TM compatible, and I decided not to because the Mimic is themed around deception and surprise attacks. It doesn't learn any self-buffing skills naturally in any of the DQM games either. Besides, I don't want to rely on Calm Mind sweeping every game, or it just becomes boring. Blaine's Fire Gym was a major hurdle, because I just couldn't do enough damage after 2 Intimidates from his Growlithe and Arcanine, and I had no real means of recovery. I had the Quick Claw on me, so I don't know if I actually outsped his Arcanine or if it was just a Quick Claw proc, and I paralyzed it with Secret Power. Well, it didn't matter, because it burned me with Fire Blast, and I had no way to heal myself, so this was a loss. I equipped a Rost Berry instead on my second try, but again, those 2 back-to-back Intimidators were just killing my already mediocre attack stat. By the way, it seemed that I did outspeed his Arcanine, but I still couldn't even 3-shot it, and he had potions to heal it back to full. I was out of PP for Secret Power after finally taking out his Arcanine, and Crunch without Stab or Special Attack EVs couldn't do enough to his Rapidash, which has higher special defense as well. I definitely should have healed my PP before the fight. But even with full PP and a Rost Berry, this fight was far from easy, because I just couldn't do enough damage to outrun his potions. I don't know where the return TM is in this game, or if it's even accessible before the post-game. I wouldn't want to lose a move slot to rest so early either, especially when my move pool was already so shallow. In the end, I just decided to retry this fight over and over, until I finally got lucky with the damage rolls and paralysis procs. As you can probably tell, this really isn't looking good for the endgame fights. Fire Blast is pretty much the equivalent of Frizzle in this game, but it doesn't have perfect accuracy, so I'll just stick with Flamethrower for now. Fire isn't very helpful in the league anyway. Giovanni's gym was thankfully a piece of cake. I used Giga Drain to take out both of his Rhyhorns, and Secret Power took care of his Dugtrio, Nidoqueen, and Nidoking. Secret Power didn't make contact in this gen, or maybe ever, so I didn't have to worry about getting poisoned by his Nido's Poison Point ability. Earthquake is yet another useful TM that I can't learn. For a while, I actually thought about making all TMs compatible with all monsters, because every monster can learn every skill in the DQM games via breeding and scrolls. But Pokémon can only have 2 types and 1 ability, instead of up to 8 different traits and individual resistances. So, that would make the game boring, as stats would become the primary factor that sets the monsters apart. I bought the Shadow Ball TM from the Game Corner. It's physical in Gen 3, but its secondary effect lowers special defense. I think they just cloned Crunch and forgot to change its effect. The rival fight before the league was one I could have easily lost, if not for an inexplicably stupid decision made by the AI. Things started off poorly as I was hit by Feather Dance from his Pidgeot, followed by Scary Face from his Charizard. My Shadow Ball couldn't even do a third to his Charizard with halved attack stat. But, after taking me down to only 30 HP, the AI, in its infinite wisdom, decided to throw the match by literally feeding me his Rhyhorn. This was simply idiotic, when any attack from his Alakazam or Gyarados would have taken me out. I certainly shouldn't have been able to win this fight, but who am I to complain when the AI wanted to lose? I learned Double Edge to replace Secret Power at the end of Victory Road. It's by far the strongest move I have access to, and although it has 25% recoil damage, I have enough HP for it. Here are my stats and moves going into the league. HP and defense are my best stats, but my attack is only average, and my speed is terrible even with maxed EVs. I equipped an Aspear Berry for Lorelei, so she shouldn't be a problem as long as I don't get frozen twice, which is extremely unlikely. I started off well with a critical Shadow Ball on her Dugong, but it doesn't like to attack anyway. Her Cloyster wasn't a one-shot with Giga Drain, and I don't think it's a range. This isn't my first attempt, and I chose not to show my worst attempts because I didn't want this video to be too long and boring. Surprisingly, my speed was high enough to consistently outrun her Jinx, so it most likely has a minus speed nature or imperfect IVs. I learned Psychic for Bruno, who was definitely the easiest league member in this run. As far as I know, his fighting types only have Rock Tomb to hit ghosts, since Payback wasn't added until the next generation. His Hitmonlee did have Foresight, but I don't know why he didn't send it out earlier to remove my fighting immunity. Maybe Foresight only works for the user? I have no idea, it's just one of the moves that turned out to be far more useless than the developers expected. There are better counters to evasion, like Haze and any of the Swift clones, and there are other types of moves to hit ghosts. I'm a ghost that's immune to Ghost, so you'd think that Agatha should be trivial, but that wasn't the case due to my low speed. Both of her Gangers and her Golbat are faster than me, and they can all inflict various status ailments like Toxic, Confusion, Sleep, and Nightmare. The Lum Berry is a must for this fight, but it only works once. The fight started with her Ganger burning my berry with Toxic, but luckily, none of her other Pokémon chose to inflict another ailment on me. In some of my failed attempts, she would poison me and spam Double Team, and then confuse me or put me to sleep after my berry was gone, and I could do nothing about it. This is why being slower always puts you in a passive position, and I suppose it's also why Trick Room was introduced. I had no way to one or even two-shot Lance's Pokémon, and no way to boost my stats, so let's face it, there would be zero chance for me to win without using Rest. Again, Intimidate was the killer when my attack wasn't great to begin with. I couldn't two-shot his Gyarados without using Double Edge, and I'd prefer to save my Chesto Berry for his Dragonite, which would lock itself into Outrage. The Battle or Shell Armor ability comes in handy when using Rest strategies, as it adds a layer of consistency. Its description is misleading though, as it only prevents critical hits, not block them like the Critical Guard trait in DQM does. In other words, it simply turns hits that rolled crit into normal hits, and so it won't make you immune to moves like Frost Breath. Anyway, Lance wasn't hard to beat with Rest. Outrage from his Dragonite couldn't do more than a third, as it only has 90 power in Gen 3, so I could easily stall out all of its PP if I had to. However, the final champion battle was where everything went south. His Pidgeot was faster than me, and it hit me with Feather Dance on the first turn. My following Double Edge couldn't even do half, which meant it wouldn't be a one-shot with my attack stat intact. It then lowered my accuracy with Sand Attack, so this was basically GG already. He sent out his Gyarados next, so my attack got cut further by its Intimidate. Giga Drain did almost nothing, and all I could do was Rest to stall out the PP of its Hydro Pump. Fire Blast from his Charizard clearly did more than a third, and since I was slower, it meant that I couldn't use Rest to stall out its PP. To win this matchup, would need to either fish for a miss or land a crit. But realistically, I might just have to resort to using Double Team. I've tried at least 8 times in total, and I couldn't even get past Agatha in half of those tries. But seeing as this video is already over 20 minutes long, and no one watches long videos these days, I'll just cut out my failed attempts and show you the successful run. The first 2 battles went the same way, but I think something broke Agatha's AI this time. Her Ganger used Shadow Punch when I was immune to it. Trainer AI is supposed to check type affinities before anything else, so I have absolutely no idea what happened there. Lance also went the same way. All I had to do was not take unnecessary risks. I got insanely lucky this time against the rival, as his Pidgeot used neither Feather Dance nor Sand Attack, and I burned one of his potions on it. I couldn't avoid an attack drop from his Gyarados, but it was a free win once I stalled out its Hydro Pump. I also got insanely lucky against his Charizard, whose Fire Blast rolled low damage at least twice in a row, allowing me to survive 3 hits with only 12 HP remaining, and then stall out its PP. Here I leveled up and learned Haze, which was handy for restoring my attack stat after the Intimidate, but I was tired and made a stupid mistake. I was supposed to replace Double Edge, since he still had a Rhydon, but I totally forgot about it and replaced Giga Drain instead. This meant the Rhydon took much longer than necessary to defeat, but at least I wasn't punished for it. So, in conclusion, the Mimic was really underwhelming as a Pokémon, and this was mainly due to its mediocre attack stats and dreadful speed. Pokémon games are very unfriendly towards slow physical attackers in general, as physical moves tend to be worse as well. I didn't want to give it the Ghost and Dark typing, which has no weaknesses in this gen. I thought about Ghost and Psychic, but there was no way it could win before level 80 with 2 double weaknesses. Anyway, I apologize for another long video, and thanks for watching.